Guest speaker today. Actually, Cliff and I go back to 1970 when we were both at Quan Tri during Lam Son 719. He was with the 174th. I was with the 3rd to the 17th. He was kind of at the other end of the runway down toward the mess hall and some other areas. I've known him for actually a number of years. See him at Quad A. He's very active in the Army Aviation Heritage Association. He's a retired lieutenant colonel, and believe it or not, they actually were engineers that were pilots, and he's one of about 5, I think, in the entire country. But he was retired after 27 years as a lieutenant colonel. A great guy, flew Hueys almost his entire time, spent a lot of time in training back at Rucker in those days, and he's got a great story to tell us about helicopters, and particularly the Huey. And so Cliff, welcome. Cliff Stern, please.
Right up here. After sitting at that table during this presentation, I'm a little leery to do this now. Seems like it's a rough crowd, but I brought this hat for one reason, and it's our Army Aviation Heritage Foundation hat, but more important, it's made in Vietnam. I know Joe Galloway was here last month. And I had the privilege of being interviewed by him in May. And great guy, as you've already found out. He's a better speaker. He's got more experience, but I am taller and better looking, so I'm here. And he also gave me I didn't know he was in Lam Son 719 covering it for the press. And he gave me some information that I had not known up to that point, so I've included it in this presentation. I give this talk mostly to high schools around our area down on the south side. It's amazing how many kids actually enroll in a Vietnam War class, and they actually pay attention, they ask good questions. It's kind of amazing that kids that age have any interest at all in a war that was fought so long ago. And as you know, when we came home, it wasn't very popular. Next, I'm going to see if these buttons work. Okay. I think Kurt already told you. When I went to this 174th, it's kind of a unique story. I arrived in Cam Ranh Bay or wherever we came those days. I didn't pay much attention, just get on the airplane, get off, and look for bad things to happen. But I was in the area where repo depot where they assigned you. And of course, I'd been there a couple days, and people say, well, here's the thing you need to figure out. Whatever corps they send you to, and don't take offense if this offends, shouldn't offend anybody, but their take was, if you're a helicopter pilot, and you probably want the bigger number corps than, the smaller numbers. And so the assignments came out, and mine said 3rd Corps Plantation. And I said, this is just great. About 2 o'clock that afternoon, the revised copy came out, and they had shifted everybody one, and I end up in I Corps with the AmeriCal Division. So fate's fate, I guess. I was an engineer and an aviator. I was an aviator for about 10 years. Engineer to start, aviator, and then I finished up as an engineer. Coincidentally, that's when my flight pay ran out and I didn't meet any more gates, so I figured it was better to go back that way. My son is actually the reason I got re-involved with the Vietnam War at all. He's 36 now, just got married. That's a good thing. And he kept dragging me into things 3 or 4 years ago. He made me join VHPA, which I did, and I'm happy to do that. I joined my alumni association from the 174th in Vietnam. Hadn't seen these guys in 45 years, and we go back to this reunion, and it's like time stood still. We were different. We were a lot older, but you could still see who was who, and it was really unique. And I had breakfast the first morning there, and I see this guy sitting in the table, big overalls, obviously from southern Alabama, kind of talked a little different than we do. So we sat down, had breakfast, and then a couple hours later he comes up to me and says, sir, I need to apologize to you. I didn't realize you were my platoon leader over there. It turns out he was my door gunner. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. And I would tell you, we met 3 years ago for the first time in 40 plus, and I would tell you he's my best friend in the world now. So we've relinked with all that. We have over 200 people still in our alumni organization, and we only had 1,000 ever assigned to the company. So it's pretty popular, pretty vibrant organization. And then, of course, I joined the Army Aviation Heritage Foundation. My son kidnapped me, took me down to Terra Field. I thought I was going driving a race car. He saw a Huey. We end up in a Huey. I end up flying in a Huey. I joined the organization, and now I'm the executive director. So it's one of those things that comes up. And Kurt told me I could do one paid commercial. And I want to talk about the foundation real quick. Founded in 1997. We currently have 10 flyable aircraft, 4 Hueys, 5 Cobras, a Bird Dog 58. We've got another 10 Cobras in the back. Flew 10,500 people last year. And why we do this is when you see the faces of people who come out of those aircraft, particularly a lot of the Vietnam vets who've closed a door that was never closed. It's just, it makes it all worthwhile. It's a great experience. This past weekend, we had 3 aircraft in Forest City, Iowa, and yes, we flew them there. And also 3 in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and we flew those there too. And this weekend alone, we carried over 1,600 people on rides. So that's how we derive funding for our foundation. We've conducted 3 Vietnam 50th commemorative events this year. We've provided a Cobra to the Birdies for the Brave at Sugarloaf, Operation Homefront. And it's just great. People enjoy it, and we have a good time doing it. Now, I may not get the button straight ever. I don't need to tell you this. First off, how many people participated in Lam Son 719? Damn. The worst thing for a war story is to have witnesses. If anything is not true, could you wait to the end to bring that up to me personally? The helicopter was it was just great. It proved itself in Vietnam. It's still very, very viable in the operational forces. We could get people in. We could get people out. We did a lot of things differently. And one of the most important things we did is we were able to save people that wouldn't have been saved in the past. Our company was an assault helicopter company, but I can't tell you how many medevac missions we flew just because we happened to be there when the time was right. I was supposed to go to Vietnam out of flight school, like probably a number of you. My brother was over there, so they decided they'd leave me in the States for 9 months. So they send a brand new first lieutenant to the Executive Army Flight Detachment at Davison Airfield. And stocked completely with majors, captains, CW4s, and they'd never seen a lieutenant, much less what they were going to do with me. So fortunately, one of them decided to adopt me as his pet, and I learned more from him as CW4 Warren Case. I learned more from him in 9 months than I could have possibly ever learned from anybody else. And I think it helped me when I went to Vietnam. I told you about when I got there and got assigned. When I went to the AmeriCal, we spent a couple days in the combat college or whatever. Don't do this, that kind of stuff. And then I got shipped to my unit. And I got shipped to the 174th Assault Helicopter Company. Knew nothing about really assault helicopter companies up to that time. But all of a sudden I became the 2nd platoon leader. I was 23 years old, had 10 aircraft, about 40 people, and all of a sudden I was to make decisions that were life and death type things. So you grow up pretty fast over there. And I learned, probably the most important thing I learned, and I still learn when I go back to my reunions, and you know this personally, is that when you're over there, you're taking care of the person next to you. I don't remember flying on a combat assault mission because of the color of our flag or the politics of the time. We flew those missions because we had a job to do and we were taking care of the people around us. Our call signs were dolphins and sharks. Shark's teeth, you've probably seen them, been on the VHP magazine, things like that. We got permission to use those flying tiger teeth from General Chenault. And so it's pretty awesome when you see a Charlie model coming up at 10 feet off the ground and all of a sudden you're the bad guy and the next thing you see is these huge shark's teeth. It's just, very effective. First Corps, we supported the 11th Infantry Brigade primarily when we were in Southern I Corps, a place called Duck Pho. We flew everything, combat assaults, flare missions, medevacs, and anything else anybody could dream up. And then on January 25th, 1971, we received orders to move north. And that's when the entire world changed for us. This is who we were. This is what my company looked like. These guys were in my platoon. And that's just what we had. We had a lot of 18, 19-year-old young men that were flying helicopters and doing just a great job at it. And then, of course, this is who we thought we were. Those of you who know helicopter pilots, that attitude doesn't ever change, by the way. I mean, you talk about a cocky bunch of people. And I think given what we did, particularly in the Assault Helicopter Company where we were, you really needed to have that confidence and that cockiness to be effective. The guy in the middle on the top, that's actually me. I was much taller then, a lot younger, obviously. The picture on the top right is called our War Story Chair. And that was in the Officers Club. And when you started telling a war story, you had to sit in that chair. You had to grab the cyclic and pull the trigger. And then there was a skull, and I don't know where it came from. There was a skull with red lights on top, and then you pressed the button, and the red lights went on, and the club became silent. And then you told your war story. And then if everybody thought it was great, they'd give you a thumbs up. If they thought it was bad, they'd give you a thumbs down. If you got a thumbs down, you had to buy a round. I never saw a good story. The guy on the left picture, the far right, he was my platoon sergeant. He was the oldest guy around. I bet he was almost 30. And he did a great job for us, and the rest of them there. Here's when we moved to Quang Tri, and there's a little bit of fun in everything. Not the first bullet. I mean, we had an aircraft have an engine failure on takeoff. That should have been a sign. We were told to fly north to Da Nang from Duc Pho. We were a little south of Chu Lai. We were hosted by a Marine wing, and I'm sure there's a number of Marines here. I know there was one at the table that I was sitting at. We landed. This Marine group hosted us, took care of us, got us a place to sleep, gave us good food, went out drinking, partying that night, and the next morning we come out, and their symbols are painted on our aircraft. So when we went into Laos, we carried our markings, and we also had the Marine Corps markings on our aircraft. This is Quang Tri. This is a great place. We moved into an abandoned orphanage. Now, those of you who are in Vietnam, you can imagine what an abandoned orphanage looked like if you knew what an orphanage looked like. I mean, it was pretty bad. And the only funny story I'll tell you here is we moved in first, and then we had a CAV unit move in next. And I thought it was Kurt's unit, but after discussing it, it probably wasn't. But it could have been. And I believe it was the 2nd of the 17th. And we were there, and they moved in, and a couple days later, here's our company commander getting us in formation. And that just doesn't happen. You can't put helicopter pilots in a formation. It doesn't work. And so he puts us in formation, stands us at ease, and then this squadron commander comes over, and he starts to rip us because somebody had stole a Stetson, or a Stetson was missing. And so he goes on with his long diatribe of why that's important, blah, blah, blah. And lo and behold, one of my, really vocal warrant officers in the back row yells, "Hell, cowboy hats. I quit wearing a cowboy hat when I was 10 years old." And our relationship never was good. Did anybody have anything to do with the planning of Lam Son 719? Please say no. Okay, good. I want to talk about the battle plan and just what we faced when we were there. The idea was that we would insert the South Vietnamese. There are no American advisors with them. We would insert them, and I'll show you a picture of Route 9. And we take an armored column up Route 9, and we would airdrop them all around it, and then we move on to Chapone, which is a major supply depot, and we would destroy it. That was the idea. I think the underlying theme here was we wanted to prove that Vietnamization worked. At least that's what I understand from watching the History Channel. The U.S. advisors could not cross the border with them. Now, those of you who worked with Vietnamese units, those advisors were very important in coordinating all kinds of things with us, like getting them in, getting them out, resupplied, etc. What we ended up with when we put them over there and they had no advisors, sometimes they couldn't communicate to us, and that was really tragic. Largest helicopter incursion of any war that I know of. There were times when we used in excess of 120 ships in one lift. Dewey Cannon 2 was the precursor to Lam Son 719. It involved from where we were up to the border, and then of course when we crossed, and there were American divisions up there. So we had 101st and the 1st Division, 1st Infantry Division had elements up there with us. And so up to the point where we crossed the border, we were flying regular type missions. Now this is strictly my interpretation of the battle plan. It is probably not written any place, and who knows if it's true or not. In 1967, they started talking about this, how they were going to invade Laos and do this thing. Of course, it got shelved a number of times. They had initially, there were like 5 to 7 divisions that were supposed to participate in it. And that's a pretty large number of folks. Called for massive airstrikes, great air support, all that good stuff that we would do before we'd go in and, launch any type of invasion of that sort. And it was a combined operation finalized in late 1970. President and Congress decided that there would be no U.S. boots on the ground. So the planning up to that point was, let's send them with what we've got, because it's working really well. And then, of course, we can't send any boots on the ground. And that seems to have stuck with us for a long time. The new plan changed. It called for just 2 ARVN divisions to go across, and partial of the 2 divisions of the U.S. to support them up to that point. So all of a sudden, this plan lost a number of divisions of people. Route 9 was reported to be a stable surface. I'll show you a picture in a minute. It's just a big dirt road. I mean, it's a big dirt road. High ground on one side and low end river on the other. And I talked about Joe Galloway, and we talked, and I had no clue in the world that he had covered Lam Son 719, and he gave me a lot of insight. But evidently there was a Vietnamese person working for Time magazine in Saigon that got hold of the plans about a month before we were going to invade. And so consequently, the guys on the other side knew exactly what we were going to do. And they gave us, and they put 65,000 NVA troops over there. And they were NVA, they weren't VC at all. They were soldiers, they wore uniforms, they did things like soldiers would do, not helter-skelter. There's Route 9. You can see water on one side, high ground on the other. We went in February. That's a really good idea because that's when it really rains a lot. So they sent an armor column up that road. And of course, we were dropping in troops on both sides. I talked about the 3 divisions. And this would tell you how our mentality was in those days. We had to move a lot of aviation assets from all over Vietnam to mass them up there to conduct this operation. So the infinite wisdom said, well, all we got to do is change their call signs, and then the bad guys won't know who's coming. So I went from Dolphin 2.6 to Boats 2.6, and we sure got a good reception on the other side for somebody who didn't know we were coming. One aviation unit, I believe it was the 229th, actually was a fixed wing battalion, and they converted it to rotary wing for the operation in a very short period of time. The idea was that we'd pull the NVA would be pushing back, destroy Chapone, and counterattack either way, whatever. And that was the battle plan. And I think the real political plan was that we could show that the Vietnamese could actually do what they were intended to do. My first encounter with Quezon, you had to go, we flew up a valley to get there. And then when you got to a certain point, you flew up through the clouds. And on the other side, you popped out, and there was the plateau of Quezon. And it was surrounded by 3 very large, high mountains. I think we controlled 2 of them, and the other guys controlled the highest one. I met a Marine sniper who was there during the Battle of Quezon, and we were here, and they were there, and it was really difficult. But anyway, we took a lot of heat from those mountains. The Air Force, near the end, were bringing their C-130s in, dropping the back door down, and just sending stuff out on a parachute. They weren't going to land there. It was just too dangerous. And that's Quezon right there. My first encounter there, I took a brigade commander out there for a meeting, and I landed. I'd never been to Quezon. Looked okay to me. I set it down. He got out, and he went to his meeting, and this young MP tiptoes over to my aircraft, and he says, "Sir, you know you landed in a minefield? You need to move this." And I told him, I said, well, first I'm not moving it, and you tell the colonel to be real careful when he comes back, and we'll just take straight up. This is what we faced there, and I know, those of us who were there, we got this big exaggeration that nobody else ever faced anything like that, and I know that's not true, but we faced this at a time when it was masked so much that it just, the volume of fire we took, the number of enemy we saw was just phenomenal. We had never seen that before. Permanent party, they had permanent party. They had engineer battalions assigned there. Transportation battalions assigned right in this general area. And if you've never seen the Ho Chi Minh Trail, it's like an interstate, except it's not paved. And they've got repair crews there. They just could do phenomenal things in a very short period of time. 5 divisions, 1 tank regiment, 1 artillery, 12 infantry regiments, and 19 NVA anti-aircraft battalions. 19 anti-aircraft. My theory is the reason any of us got back alive is because they were used to shooting at fast movers, and we probably didn't thrill them enough, and they couldn't lead and lag us enough to get us because there was just too much of it, and we were flying pretty slow. We did change our tactics a lot during that time frame. This is what we faced. Up to a 57 millimeter radar-controlled weapons. And then, of course, the 12.7. February 8th, 1971, worst day of my life. We joined in with the 101st Assault Helicopter Battalion to take a lift into LZ Hotel. It was 9 kilometers inside the border of Laos. Multiple aircraft shot down in front of me. I believe I was the first one to land there. And my wingman landed 20 seconds later, and he was killed right there. They had set up this machine gun. As we came out, you could see him setting it up, and he got it. So it's just fate. You're either lucky or you're not lucky, and things happen. Had it been a minute later, how would that have worked out if I'd have been a minute earlier? You wonder about this. I still don't know the answer to that. The young man's name was Bob Gentry, and he turned 22 2 days before that. We went back in there 5 more times that day, and the fire just got intensified. My door gunner, Mike Hall's his name, he says, I was sitting there and I was firing at this hooch, and bullets kept bouncing off. And I'm thinking, what is this? And then finally we learned out it was an armored vehicle that they had put a hooch over the top as camouflage, but the bullets were bouncing off. So once again, uniformed soldiers, nothing helter-skelter about this, well planned. February 9th was a rainy day. We didn't go up, and we needed that day to recuperate because we took a lot of heat the first day. Every day we flew combat missions. If it was not weathered in, we flew combat missions every day. We ended about 6 or 8 different LZs carrying these guys in there. February 8th to the 20th, we were making really good progress. We were moving in the right direction. We were able to resupply them. We were able to get them in there. And then some of my pictures I've got in the middle there. It's one of our LZs. But after the 20th, the NVA figured it out completely, and it started to be a full-scale retreat. And that's when it really got bad. Taking them in was bad enough, but getting them out was just almost impossible. And think from their mentality, they're stuck there. They know if they don't get out of there, they're going to be killed. It's just that simple. So their mentality was, I've got to get out of there. We would go in, pick them up, 10, 12, 14, 15 of them would jump on the ship, and we'd get enough where we could lift it, and then a couple would grab the skids, and they'll fly, and we'd start flying off, and at 500,000 feet, they'd start dropping off. So we ended up having to grease our skids so they couldn't grab hold of them, and we finished the rest of the tour with grease skids on all our aircraft. On March 20th there, we extracted LZ Sophia, which was one of the ones closer to Chapon, and 28 of our 40 aircraft took hits. And the only good LZ I can ever remember over there, the Air Force provided us a 10,000-pound daisy cutter, and there wasn't nothing moving till you got to the outside of that thing, and it's just huge. That one on the bottom, I believe, is LZ Ranger. That's typical of what we did went into. This is our losses. This is air crew losses. 65 aircraft, 818 wounded, 42 missing, 618 helicopters damaged, and well over 1,000 destroyed. I think we changed the format a little bit on that, so that's why the picture's covered. That's one of our sharks. And this article over here was in Time magazine. It says, just say it was the Comancheros. One of the aircraft we have in the foundation now was a Comanchero aircraft that participated in Lam Son 719, so it's kind of old home week. Cobras took a beating because if you're familiar with a Cobra, when they're coming at you, it's 3 feet wide. It's not much you can do with it. You really feel safe. When you pull up, you got that big wide profile on the side, and it was not unusual to see one of those get hit by anti-aircraft fire and the whole rotor system just come off. They really took it hard there. Our gunships were Charlie models, and they were underpowered, and they could only go limited range. So usually when we went into longer distance LZs, the Cobras provided us support, not our own gunships. Can you, I've got this is a tape, combat tape, one of the pilots did, and it's got some language in it. It isn't real good, but I think if you want to hear what it was like, this is a good way to do it. And if this gentleman in the back could press 29 fire-3, see if it works.
Roger, I've got 3 of the crew members out. The co-pilot's still in there. We didn't see him. I think he's still in the ship. The ship's on fire and it's burning bad. Roger. There's another ship right next to it. I believe there's somebody on it. You can get in there. The other ship's not on fire. Come on out. Did you say that was 2-6? Yeah, boat 6 out of the LZ. Roger, there are 4 people in there with another ship. The ship is not on fire. The blades were stopping when I was there. I went by the ship. I didn't see anybody. If you could get somebody back in there for them, I think I can take it back in. Wasn't a mid-air collision? Roger, get the hell out of there. I don't know what. Come on out of here. Clear, right? God, we just got a bird going down on fire. Somebody said. That looked like radar. I'd say again, sure is a bird going bigger than shit. Roger, somebody just went down just to the west of the Louis on fire. All right. Oh, the son of a bitch exploded south. Did you see that? That's one of the over Delta 1. God damn. Dude, let's cut the car. Liz, get up on that ridge. Hey, what's a Cobra? Yeah, Roger, it was a Cobra making a turn run over there. He exploded in midair. Okay. Boat 6 a while ago. This is boat 6. We have 2 ships down by the LZ. I've got 3 of the crew members off one of the ships. I think there are 5 people left in there. One of the ships was on fire, and one of the other ships doesn't appear to have any damage. I think the engine was shot out as it was a transmission.
I think that's it. That's kind of what happened every day. And remember, these are 18 and 19-year-old young men. I mean, it's phenomenal. And, there's a lot of raised voices and things in there, but you can feel the calming effect that some of these guys have. And they, most of the time, nobody got really excited until it was all over with. And then you got to go back and think, how the hell did I survive this? So we had just a phenomenal. I was fortunate. I spent a year. I actually spent 8 months with the 174th, and our mission was nothing. Our logo was nothing impossible, and never did I see us leave anybody on the ground, no matter what the cost, whether that was one of ours or one of the infantrymen. Just phenomenal what people can do, and when they're that young. And I talk to high schools, and I'm talking to kids that are 2 years younger than the guys who were in these aircraft flying them, so it was pretty phenomenal. Okay. I'm hung up. I don't think he can fix that. I was going to show you some pictures. Not much to look at, I guess, but the 174th Assault Helicopter Company was awarded the Valorous Unit Citation 4 years ago. It took that long, and there were 50 or 60 helicopter organizations involved in Lam Son 79. We weren't the only ones. There were many assault helicopter companies, and some of them took a bit more of a beating than we ever did. particularly the ones that are just put together at the last minute. We lost, we took 33 aircraft north, and we came back with 5 originals. All of our gunships were shot down and destroyed. We completely came back with a whole new fleet of Mike models instead of Charlie models, which meant you could actually hover instead of just drag along the ground till you got enough lift and then jump on. We lost 4 people there. We lost Bob Gentry on February 8th. He was in my platoon. He was my wingman. 2 other members I lost, Pat Erb and Steve Birch. And what's kind of funny, and life's this way, Steve was actually flying with Bob Gentry the day he got killed and managed to get the aircraft back out of his dive and land it safely. And then he and Pat got killed later on. And then the tape you heard was on March 3rd, and they were talking about the 2 aircraft down in the LZ. Well, one of the door gunners there, Gary Padilla, was killed there, and we couldn't get him out. We had to go back in the next day. So we lost 4 people there. We had about 3,800 flight hours, 16,000 sorties. We carried almost 18,000 passengers in and out. We got a lot of Silver Stars, a lot of Distinguished Flying Crosses. But that's real good and fine, but it doesn't make up for anything as far as, the people we lost over there. Guess I'm done now. Do any of you know Mike Sloniker, VHPA? You probably heard the name. Yeah, I know Glenn does. Glenn's in the Army Aviation Heritage Foundation. I'm sure you all know that. More importantly, last 2 weeks, he actually got his Class 2 flight physical renewed. Pretty phenomenal for a guy who's almost 100 years old. Oh yeah, I don't know that. A quote from Mike Sloniger, and here we go. I'm back in business. That's Pat on. Well, you can read that too. Those are the 4 we lost. Bob would have been the oldest at 22. All the others are younger than that. There's Sloniker. And I think I'll just let you read this because it's the absolute truth. People just were there for each other. That's what they did. That's what we did every day. And that's why we did what we did. And once again, no one was ever left on the ground. We did have, we had our witch doctor, maintenance guy shot down. And probably was in a place he shouldn't have been, but nevertheless, he got shot down, went down. And he was on the ground for 3 days. He had himself, a co-pilot, and 7 mechanics. When they finally got rescued, he had 3 bullets left out of everybody there. But the Navy and the Air Force flew cover for him the entire 3-day period. He was never left alone, and they kept the bad guys off. And those, I don't know if you're familiar with an organization called the HACBAO. That's kind of the Vietnamese Special Forces. They're very good at what they do. They actually had to walk in to get him out because we couldn't lift him out. It was just too bad. And the code was they were supposed to say something, HACBAO or something like that, so they could see who they were, identify themselves, and then they'd rescue them. Well, of course, the HACBAO forgot the password, so it became kind of controversial there for a little bit. But they finally figured out they were the good guys, and we got them back out. But, once again, he was down there 3 days. We had a guy on the ground for 30 days, walked back out. So it was pretty phenomenal. Anyway, this is kind of what it's all about. And I know the rest of you did the same thing. I'm pretty proud of my service with that company. Told you about the Valorous Unit citation that we got. My hero, I consider these guys heroes. We use that term pretty loosely these days, I think, for a lot of cases, but these guys did heroic stuff all the time, not just one or 2 occasions. And the camaraderie in battle, there's nothing that can compete with that. What you do and what you say in combat, the people you've learned to know and trust, you can't get that anyplace else, I don't think. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. Are there any questions you might want to ask? Yes, sir. That was just the name they put on it. It doesn't, I don't think it had any special meaning. I better stand here. Excuse me? 719? I don't know why 719's on there.
Actually, it was Highway 9, 1971.
There you go.
That's where it
That
came
works.
from.
Now I learned something else today.
And you know the name Lam Son, where that came from? How many of you know, remember the general? There was a general, it was named after a general's name, by the way.
Oh, was it? Yeah, one of the Vietnamese generals.
We had to take that test before we could do our flights out in Lam Son, so.
We we must have flunked the test. We just flew. Yes, sir.
I want to thank the foundation you represent. Last year at the General Ray Davis Middle School, you guys flew in a Cobra gunship and a Huey gunship. They landed on the football field, and you cannot imagine what it meant for those children to come out there. We had one teacher behind, she was in the Hell-Ho, I think it's called, behind the M60 machine gun, and she was looking out among the students, and she looked at me and said, "I wish this damn thing was loaded." But I want to tell everybody this. They brought the special needs kids out, and one little girl could hardly walk, and she saw that Huey gunship, and she ran over to it, and she just put her hand on the skin of the aircraft. And I thought I had never seen such a smile on a child's face. But you guys came around and got that child, and you put her in the pilot seat. That made her day, okay? Thank y'all so much for what you do. You're coming back this year, too.
To where? Yeah, I'm sure we are.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot more schools this year.
And I'm sorry taking so much time, but there was a tall black kid by himself from special needs down at the Cobra. There was no one down there. And I went down there to talk to him. I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "This is awesome. This is awesome." And I said, "Well, I'm glad you're having a good time." And he said, "This is awesome. This is awesome." And he looked at me and said, "May I be excused now?" And I said, "Well, of course you may be excused. Are you okay?" He said, "Yes, but I'm so excited. I need to go pee." You guys did a fantastic job. Thank you so much, okay?
Thank you.
All right, I'll take two more questions. Tom?
My name's Tom Owens. You mentioned the Marines and everybody else, but I was with the 5th Mech at Charlie 2 in Contienne and Camlo, and I witnessed everything y'all did. And y'all got to leave. I had to stay a couple more months after you left. It wasn't fun. I already been there about 6 months, but I witnessed history, and it brings tears to my eyes, the sacrifices everybody made during that period of time. I mean, it was very dangerous, and God bless you. But this, my friend standing here next to me, would never pick me up because I always pop red smoke. He'd just fly as far away from me as he could. But I stayed on the ground and survived.
Yeah, well, the thing, if I remember about red smoke, it designated something other than I should be landing here.
True.
Thank you. Your trip to General Ray Davis School was written up in the Red Clay, which is the news magazine of the Khe Sanh Veterans Association.
Really?
I just a week ago returned from the Khe Sanh Veterans reunion, my first reunion of any kind, any size ever. I was there in '67. You ought to be a part of the Khe Sanh Veterans Association also. But I wanted to ask, I understand that when Khe Sanh was abandoned, that basically everything was blown away and or mowed over. Was there anything left when you came in there?
I only remember tents. Of course, we set up fuel points there. I don't remember any structures, but then I used to be remembered that day precisely minute by minute. I'm getting older now. I kind of can't, but I don't remember. There weren't any on the picture that I showed, I don't think. That tank was still out there at Lave, or sort of what it was. Yeah, that was still out there. So anyway, thank you.
All right, well, don't leave yet. We got one thing for you, Cliff. On behalf of the association, we honor you with, actually, you probably have a Vietnam Service Medal with several, not that big. Well, this one you can carry with you. Actually, if you will hang on to this thing, this keeps you low in the seat. And it's guaranteed to keep you low enough that you can stick down behind your chicken plate and you can put it over your head. Anyway, this is our gift. It's engraved on the back with our association, and also our book that we'll give you called AWOL, The Unexcused Absence of Americans Upper Class from Military Service. We thought you would enjoy reading that as well. And again, thank you so much. It's great to see you again. Round of applause for him, please.